Hey guys, it's Dr. May. How are you? I'm here today to talk about a topic that I know is on the minds of a lot of you guys. And it's something that comes up a lot for people with borderline personality disorder and also who are on DBT, but also people beyond that, not just people in that category. And that's the favorite person. Okay, so this is a type of relationship that kind of puts us on an emotional roller coaster. So it kind of gives us some amazing highs and also some terrible, really painful lows. And I'm going to speak to you about this, not just as a psychologist with my background in psychology, but also as somebody who basically has a black belt in this favorite person dynamic, my personal experience. I've been in a series of these types of relationships throughout most of my life until about 10 years ago. And I have a lot of background in this personally. So I put this together based on things I learned from psychology and also things I learned from myself. Okay, so I'm going to share this with you. Here we go. And I wish this is something that someone shared with me a long time ago, so I could have saved myself some heartache. But I hope that I'll be able to do that for you today. So it's one of those things where you can make meaning out of a difficult experience by at least using it to help others. Okay, so that's what I'd like to do with you today. All right, so here we go. So my favorite person, and I'm going to abbreviate it as FP in a bunch of the slides. So that's just what it stands for. Okay, here we go. All right, so what is a favorite person? Okay, so it's basically somebody that you've happened to pick out for one reason or another, maybe even an unconscious reason, and you developed a really intense, strong attachment to that person. And you kind of just made this unilateral decision on some level, even if it's unconscious, that this is the person in whom I'm going to anchor my idealized person, my favorite person, my dream person. And this person that I picked, the real life person, didn't choose this. I chose it for them. I decided that they're going to be my favorite person. And so I'm going to act toward them accordingly. Okay. And it's almost like I made them my higher power. Like I put them on a pedestal and came up with these high expectations for how they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to perfectly merge with me. Okay. And it's almost like I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. Like I see this person as the potential source of my ultimate happiness, or feeling complete as a person, or feeling happy and secure and okay. And they're going to do that for me. So it's like a lot of pressure that I'm putting on somebody, okay, that they didn't ask to receive, okay? And the idea is that, when things go great and it feels like there's hints of that happening, that they are making me happy, that they are fulfilling my needs, I could be completely joyful and elated, but it always runs out fast. It's almost like getting high on a drug. Like you feel good for a little while and then it fades until the next interaction. And then you have to keep renewing it. And if you can't, you feel like you're crashing down, like your whole world is toppling on top of you. And you just get flooded with pain and dysregulating emotions. So it's truly a roller coaster, okay? And it's almost like mistaking love or intensity for love, okay? So that's the general gist of the definition, but I'm going to go into this a lot more detail, okay? All right, so some similar concepts. It's funny because, believe it or not, although I've been doing DBT for a long time, since 2001, I hadn't actually heard the term favorite person until fairly recently. And when I first heard it, I was like, oh, this sounds like this and this sounds like that. So the first thing that it's probably most similar to, and I'm going to make another video on this shortly, by the way, is the anxious ambivalent attachment style, which in adults is called a preoccupied attachment style. And it's very similar to the kind of dynamics that happen here, okay? I'm not going to go into full explanation now because, we have a lot to talk about. In A Course in Miracles, which is kind of a spiritual path, and Marianne Williamson talks about this and some other people, there's a concept called a special relationship. And it's almost exactly the same as a favorite person. But when because it's a spiritual path, what they say is basically like, instead of connecting to your higher power and instead of connecting to, the higher self, the spirit within you, you're putting all that on a person. And it's never going to really satisfy you because what you really need is your higher power spirit, okay? Codependency kind of has some of these dynamics too, because there's a similar kind of merging and high expectations and confusing of my needs and your needs and my feelings and your feelings. Melody Beatty writes about this a lot, and learning about that could probably help you with your favorite person dynamic. There's a woman named Patricia Evans, and she's written a lot about verbally abusive relationships and has some really good books on that. And she describes that concept more from a point of view of mostly a man anchoring his dream woman in the wife. And she calls this like a dream person or a dream woman. And he kind of idealizes her. And when she doesn't match up with his dream woman image, he starts getting upset and verbally abusive. Okay, so it's kind of similar to that in certain ways. And it's also similar to the defense mechanism of idealization, because what you do is you take some good parts of yourself that you've disowned and you see them very strongly in somebody else and you admire them in them. And then when the person doesn't match up with that idealized image, you start attacking the person for not acting that way. Okay, so this kind of comes up in the favorite person dynamic as well. Okay, so here we go. So who can become your favorite person? Well, basically, almost anybody. It's commonly in DBT becomes a therapist. It could be a teacher or a mentor. It could be a coach, maybe someone you look up to or admire. It could even be someone you've never met, such as a celebrity or a public figure or an author. Sometimes it could be someone who truly is in your life, and it could be an amplified friendship relationship or even a roommate. Somebody that you kind of just, made that, brought into that intensity to the relationship before. I'm sorry, my grammar's all. Also, it could even be your partner. Okay, so so it could kind of change forms, and throughout your life, it could change forms. You might be somebody who goes from one favorite person relationship to another. So when things really disintegrate with one person, you eventually pick up the pattern with somebody else, and you fall into it. Okay, so you got to think about your life. Try to use this as a point of reflection. Like, when did I start doing this, and who was I doing it with, and where are the similar patterns across people, right? Okay, so one of the main characteristics is a quest for merging. Okay, so look at this picture here, right? So these hearts are kind of stitched together, like the two hearts are trying to become one. Okay, and I know people say, well, yes, in a marriage, in a relationship, we're trying to be one, but there's more boundaries in place. Like, this is like a kind of a boundaryless merging, all right? And that could kind of get us in trouble. While it feels good on the one hand, it could be problematic on the other hand. Okay, so one of the tactics for merging is going on in your own head, okay? So when you decide someone's your special person, your favorite person, cross getting the terms mixed up from Course in Miracles, it's like you're making them your number one, okay? They're your biggest priority. They're the biggest thing on your mind. You put that relationship before everything. You could shift plans and change things around just to make sure you're with that person. If the person ends up being free, you could drop what you're doing and just see them, because you're putting them number one, okay? You might find yourself thinking and obsessing about the person a lot, or kind of over focusing on them and hoping that they'll over focus on you, right? It's like if you keep it fresh in your mind long enough, it's going to solidify the relationship more, right? You might even, how like you talk to yourself in your head, but sometimes you imagine yourself talking to another person or talking to an audience. You might often find yourself kind of like talking to your favorite person in your head, like your thoughts are directed toward them, like as if you're going to say what you're saying in your mind to them the next time you meet, okay? You might also like kind of amplify and replay and relive any positive interactions you've had, especially recent ones, right? So if you had kind of some nice words exchanged, or they pat you on the back, or gave you a hug, or sent you a nice text, it might be something that you're going to keep thinking about just to keep it alive, right? But eventually it fades and you're going to need something else to replenish it, okay? You might also come up with certain kinds of fantasies about the person. Like, I read about somebody who said they wanted to take their favorite person and keep them in their closet so they could take them out and talk to them and have them whenever they need them, right? You might imagine moving in with that person, or, having them with you in some other closer way. If they're your therapist, you might imagine the relationship going beyond therapy to something else that's more like a friendship or a romantic relationship, right? So there might be some, things like that that are going on in your mind with this person. And if the person's not around, you might really struggle, cognitively and emotionally, like almost like a withdrawal. Like, you kind of, oh my God, they're not here, right? Okay, so this is kind of, how we keep them alive in our mind, right? Okay, so like this picture, so it's two girls and their hair is braided together. And that's kind of like that desire for merging, right, that I was saying before. And the thought process is almost like, maybe if we did everything the same, or if we were of one mind, or if we had everything in common, it would kind of keep us together. It would kind of cement the relationship and everything would go much more smoothly. So you strive to be like the person. So you might find yourself kind of like adopting some of the things that they like. Maybe you kind of listen to the same music they listen to, or if they like a certain movie, you go out and see the movie. Or maybe there's even certain expressions that they say that you start to say, or certain mannerisms they have, or certain interests they have. Maybe they're interested in golf and you never thought about golf before, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I think I want to swing the putter, swing the club around a little bit, right? You might even strive to be the same career as them, or kind of adapt their political views or their values, or their opinions, right? So it feels like if I'm just the same as them, then that's going to keep them around. It's going to keep everything good. Okay. All right. So another thing is we're aiming to seek like this perfect love, and I put love in quotes, okay, because merging and intensity is not exactly a healthy love, but it could feel on some level like love, right? And this is not necessarily romantic love. Like sometimes you might have a panic, like if you have a special person who's the same sex as you and you always thought of yourself as heterosexual, but now you have this strong feeling towards someone who's also a female and you're a female or something like that. But it's not necessarily romantic. It's just like this intense admiration, right? It could be someone in the role of like a bigger sister or a mother or somebody like that, okay? So you're always trying to seek this positive attention, like love and praise and admiration from them, or validation and agreement. Like sometimes you kind of like try to get validation by getting them to go along with something that you wanted. Like if you make a suggestion to them and they do it, it feels like, yes, they did it, right? Or hey, check out the show that I like, and they do it, and you're like, all right, that's great. And if they don't, you're like, oh man, right? So you're sort of seeking for this like a perfect attunement, this mirroring, like that they're gonna perfectly understand you. They kind of understand what you're thinking and feeling and communicate it just right. Okay. And you almost get like a high from these amazingly perfect interactions when they do happen. Okay. But even in perfect relationships in real life, or like really good, secure, healthy relationships, they say there's only about 30% attunement. So the rest of the time, it's kind of like, we got to be tolerating the imperfection, right? But if you're in this mode, you're trying to seek perfect attunement and mirroring all the time, which is not a realistic expectation. Okay. All right. Another dynamic gets to be like you're in this boundaryless one down position. Okay. If you watch my video about, what did I call that? Boundaries and self-esteem in relationships, and I go over the relationship grid. This is the part of the grid that's boundaryless and one down. Okay. So you're giving them all the power because they have the power to accept you or reject you or love you or hate you. And so you're groveling in some sense for their attention, for their approval, right? And you might even find yourself selling out or sacrificing yourself or sacrificing your values just to keep them around, just to keep their love and approval. And in some sense, it's like, it feels like, I'll just do it, it's worth it. I'll just give it up, I don't care. But in another sense, it feels really crappy because you're not being yourself. You don't feel like there's room for the full you. So you just throw away all the parts of you that don't seem like it will work in this relationship, okay? And you might put their needs and wants before yours. You might just kind of just go along with whatever they want. And even like offer to help or be indispensable in some way, because even if you're not sure if they really love you or want you around, it's better to be needed than to be wanted. I mean, it's better to be wanted than needed, but it's better to be needed than nothing at all, right? So it's kind of like, that's that one down position. You're like, I'll settle for being needed because I'm not sure if they really love me, because it's inconsistent shows of admiration and affection. Okay. And this is very tied into the prostitute archetype, right? So think about a prostitute who, sacrifices her body, her self-esteem, her worthiness just to get what she needs, which is probably money or drugs, right? So I also have a video about prostitute archetype, which is also tied into this. So feel free to watch that. Okay, another dynamic that could happen with a favorite person is that you could find yourself putting yourself in a victim role or a sick role more often than you probably should. Okay, this is also a one down position. So you might have found, almost maybe even on accident, or maybe on purpose, because you're in therapy, let's say with your favorite person, that when you talk about your problems or you're distressed or you're upset, that you're able to get a certain kind of comfort from that person. And the favorite person's able to, talk to you and make you feel better and give you consolation and words of wisdom. And it feels so good. There's nothing like, getting that when you're feeling down and have someone really put their arms around you, so to speak, and kind of nurture you, right? And it feels so good that you might end up, not trying too hard to feel better, because if you feel better, they may not feel the need to stay around. And this is especially the case in therapy, right? Yes, I want to feel better. I want to be happier. But if I am, I'm just going to have to end the therapy and end this favorite person relationship. And I'm not sure I really want to do that, right? It kind of puts you in a dilemma. Or you might find, well, yeah, it's okay when we're feeling good together, but it's not the same kind of satisfaction as when they're consoling me when I'm sick, okay? So it's kind of like, it's a tough decision, right? You're putting the relationship before even your own happiness and well-being at times, right? So ask yourself, am I doing this, right? It's hard to admit this, right? Because no one wants to say they're doing this intentionally or anything like that. But when you understand the desperation in this favorite person dynamic, it kind of makes more sense, okay? Okay, here's another dynamic, okay? So you could get yourself into a vampire blood donor dynamic, all right? So in this case, I hate to say it and sound judgmental, but you might be acting like the vampire because your need for attention and love and care and mirroring might be so all-consuming that the favorite person feels like you're sucking the life out of them, right? You could kind of be so like intense on keeping them around or maintaining frequent contact or constant contact, or having a lot of crises that you want them to help you with, that they feel like there's no room for them. It's all consuming, okay? You could kind of, if it goes overboard, you get more possessive and controlling and needy and all that stuff. And it's very hard for the other person. And if they react to your neediness, then you might feel, oh my God, like, like I'm being rejected now, right? But you have to remember like what it feels like on the other side, or imagine, validate the other person and what it must feel like to deal with you when you're in that mode, okay? All right, here we go. So this is another thing that happens. So you kind of, in this possessive sort of a way, have this fantasy that it's just me and my favorite person in a bubble together, right? That I'm going to overfocus on you and you're going to overfocus on me and you're going to be my everything and I'm going to be your everything. And the fantasy gets snapped when you see them having a life outside of you. So if you're seeing a therapist and then you see someone else in the waiting room, knowing that they have a relationship with the therapist, that might really break your heart. I mean, on the intellectual level, yes, they see other people, but it's almost like it snaps your fantasy that you're the only one, right? Or let's say, you're in a relationship and your boyfriend wants to hang out with his friends and now you're freaking jealous because he's spending time with someone other than you, right? So now I'm not your one and only. And it's like, oh my God. So every little sign of separation, or that someone's interested in a different hobby or a different interest, or going to work and staying late, or if they break a promise or have to change a plan, even if it's not personal. Like let's say, my boyfriend's caught at work late and because his boss wanted him to do it, I might take that as a total rejection, even though it had nothing to do with his feelings about me. So I might overinterpret things like that. It might be really hard for you if a friend or a therapist that is your favorite person goes on vacation and isn't available to you for a period of time. It might be really, really hard. Um, and if the person reacts to your vampire tendencies and establishes a boundary, it might feel really painful, even though they're just trying to make it healthier, you know? So we gotta realize that this is what we're bringing to the table. This idea that we need to merge is your idea. It's not their idea, right? So we're getting mad at them, but they're just having a natural reaction to our, engulfment, okay? Okay, so um, more about fear of separation, rejection, and abandonment. Sounds familiar, right? Okay. So because we're so afraid of this, all right, we're probably going to have this hyper-vigilant stance where if you're in danger, like let's say you're in the woods and you're worried about a bear, what are you going to do? You're going to be scanning the environment for clues about danger. Okay. So if you feel that abandonment is danger, which it is when you're a baby, but not now, but it still can feel that way, you might be constantly scanning for clues or cues that the person may not be, staying around. Okay. So you might interpret neutral things as potential abandonment or potential rejection, even if it has nothing to do with that. But you're like on this mode of like over assuming the negative. Okay. So you might be super sensitive to things too. So any little slight or criticism or the wrong kind of tone or the wrong kind of look might feel like, oh my God, like, what does this mean? And why are they mad at me? And if they're mad at me, maybe they're just going to leave me, right? So any problem you feel like could lead to the end of the relationship. Like it feels like a fragile thing, like it could just end at any time, like at the drop of the hat, and we're not going to be able to fix this thing. Um, and you also might be afraid at times that you might scare the person off with your own neediness, right? Like, and I can't even control it. Like I feel like so clingy and I'm trying to hold back, but I feel like I can't even stop. And that's going to push somebody away, right? So that might be part of the fear too, like because you can't control your own feelings or behaviors maybe. Okay, so at times when it really gets intense, right, the feeling of separateness or rejection or abandonment could lead us to feel super angry and desperate to restore the relationship, right? So, we might be, if we feel like they slighted us or rejected us, it might turn to anger, like, how dare you do that to me? It's not fair. I just want you to be the ideal person that I want you to be. And there's almost like this like, come on, please just be who I want you to be. But it's like this anger that comes out from it, okay? At times, just to get them back, you might do desperate things, such as even engage in target behaviors or say things like, I'm going to kill myself if you don't come back, right? And you may not really want to die, or maybe you're in such pain that part of you wants to die, but you just want them to come back and be that ideal person again, be that favorite person again, and not go away and be this bad person who's rejecting you, okay? And at times, the desperation may take the form of overly apologetic behavior. So like, I'll just grovel at your feet and apologize for whatever I did, even if I don't even know what I did, just to see if that's going to get you back. Okay. So this is kind of also that boundaryless one down position. All right. Okay. So essentially, as you could probably tell, it's like a cycle, right? It's like a roller coaster kind of cycle where, things are good for sometimes and you idealize the person, they're perfect, everything's great. But then some little rupture or separation happens and you could go all the way crashing down. All of a sudden you could be mad at them. You could blame them for doing that. You're so disappointed. You're feeling terrible. And then things might get back again and there's more merging and more mirroring. And then you're back to idealization. So the same person is the angel and the devil combined, depending on how things are going. And the thing is, like, the problem is you're anchoring your whole self to this, right? You're so dependent on this relationship for feeling good, for, your self-esteem, for your self-worth, for your sense of identity, that every little thing ruptures that, if something goes wrong. You don't have a solid sense of self because it's all lost and connected to that person and how things are going with that person. It's like anytime you try to look for external things to make you happy, you're always going to be disappointed because nobody could do it just right for you. Okay. So basically, this could switch back and forth very quickly, or sometimes it might be longer periods of good and interrupted by small periods of bad. It depends on your relationship. But it could change multiple times in the course of a day, and you could be up and down depending on the way the interactions are going and the way you're interpreting them. Okay. Okay. Another big thing that could come up is shame. Okay. So shame is when you feel like, I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy of belonging, right? There's something wrong with me, and therefore, who could possibly love me? Okay. So this could easily come up when, you're snapped out of your fantasy and you realize, this really is a one-sided relationship, in the sense that I might be so much more desperate to have this person in my life perfectly, loving me, and they don't feel the same way about me. You know, they might like you, but the intensity and the desperation and the wish is not the same as yours. And the inequality of it could feel really shameful, because it really puts you in the one down position when you're the one who loves so much more. You also might be ashamed of the fact that you feel so needy and you have this unrequited longing, right? No one wants to feel like, that kind of grovelly, needy person. It feels really upsetting. Um, you also might feel shame because maybe you never heard of a favorite person before, or you never heard of anyone in this type of relationship before. And you're thinking, well, what's wrong with me? Why am I doing this? Maybe there's something weird about me that I'm doing this. But believe it or not, like I said, it actually is a common phenomenon, especially with people with borderline personality disorder. And another aspect of the shame might be that in your desperate attempts to restore the relationship, you might have behaved in ways that you're really not proud of. You might have engaged in target behaviors, or cursed the person out, or became aggressive with the person, or lost control in some way, or whatever. And after the fact, when things settle down, you might feel kind of ashamed about the way you acted, because maybe it's really not your best self. Okay. Okay, so got to end on a high note. So what do you do? Okay, I'm stuck in this favorite person relationship. It's creating a lot of angst in my life. So how do I move forward from here? What do I do now? Okay, this is often the big question. So I'm going to give you some suggestions that you could try out. Okay, now here's the main slide. If you remember one thing today, this is the main slide. And it's the main lesson that I had to learn personally. Now, this is a quote from Einstein on the left. Einstein said, "You can't solve a problem on the same level it was created. You have to rise above it to the next level." Okay, so if your expectation is that if only I can get this favorite person to be just a little bit better and love me as perfectly as I want to, then everything's just going to be great, right? My life will be perfect. I'll be happy. I'm not going to have any more problems. I'm going to feel complete, and we'll live happily ever after. Okay. If you're nursing that fantasy, you're barking up the wrong tree. It's never going to happen. Okay. Listen to me. It's never going to happen. Okay. You could try it with different people, different situations. It's just going to always lead to pain and heartache and disappointment. Okay. So trying to solve the dilemma of the dynamics in your favorite person relationship on the level of a favorite person relationship is not an effective strategy. Okay. You have to transcend the favorite person relationship by learning healthier relationship skills and establishing healthier, secure relationships. That's the only way out of this. Okay. Otherwise, you're just acting out within the favorite person dynamic, and it's just not going to happen for you. I promise that. Okay. I tried for like way, way too long in my life, and I know other people who have too, and it's just not going to work. Okay. So please, I mean this, I know it's heartbreaking to think of that because you really just want it to work, but it's just not. Okay. All right. So the first thing we have to do is admit it. Okay. Now that you understand what the favorite person relationship is in more detail, you have to just own up and admit to yourself, right? The first step to radical acceptance and saying I accept is I admit. So yes, I admit I turned such and such a person into my favorite person. And I'm doing A, B, C, D, and E, and F, and G, and H. Okay. If it's appropriate, tell the favorite person what you're doing. Admit what you're doing. Now, this doesn't mean admit how much you love them. No, this means I'm telling you, I learned about this thing called a favorite person, and I've made you into my favorite person. And I know it's not the healthiest dynamic, and I want you to help me. Okay. That's what admitting it to the person is. So if it's a therapist or someone you trust and you feel like they could handle it, tell the favorite person themselves, because maybe they could even work with you on it, right? Especially even a partner, right? Maybe they're struggling with other stuff too, and they'd be happy to help you. Okay. If not, tell someone you trust outside of the relationship and see if the person could help you figure out strategies to change it. Okay. So that's step number one. If you're staying in the relationship or want to try to make things healthier with that person, okay, this may or may not work out, but you could try. All right. So the first thing you have to do is think about creating more balance and equality in the relationship. Because as you can see, based on the description I gave you, there's not a lot of balance and equality. There's a lot of extremes. There's highs, there's lows, there's idealization, there's devaluation, right? There's I'm groveling and putting myself in a down position. I'm putting myself in a vampire position. Like, so there's a lot of polarity. Okay. So we have to make this more dialectical. All right. In a DBT way, we have to work on balancing give and fast, right? So give is the relationship effectiveness, keeping a good relationship, being kind to the person. But we can't go so extreme that I'm being so nice to the person and turning this into a prostitute archetype where I'm doing whatever you want to do and I'm being so accommodating to you that I'm squashing my own needs. Okay. So that's where the fast comes in. The fast is self-respect effectiveness. I have to stick to my own values. I got to be truthful. I got to do what's right for me and take care of the relationship. Right. I can't be so focused on my own needs to merge with you that when you don't mirror me, now I'm being nasty. Okay. That's not what I mean either. Okay. So keeping my self-respect and being, kind and nice and gentle in the relationship too. Balancing my needs and your needs, right? So similar along those lines. I can't just focus on my need to merge with you. I got to focus on what are you actually experiencing? What do you actually need from me? Am I helping you enough? Or am I just so focused on you helping me, right? If it's appropriate that this is a balanced relationship, such as not being a therapy relationship, it's a really important consideration. Otherwise, you're just going to suck the life out of the person. Also, balance focusing on the relationship versus exploration. Okay, so in secure attachment, they talk about that. Part of your energy is focused on a relationship or relationships, and part of your energy is free to explore and do other things independently. Right, so pursue a hobby, a career, an interest, whatever it happens to be. All right. So there should be more of a balance in that. It shouldn't be 98% of your energy on the relationship and 2% on whatever's left over. Okay. And we're going to aim for interdependence, right? That we're helping each other in a collaborative kind of a way, in a cooperative way. Not that I'm overly dependent on you or vice versa, right? I'm not too independent. I'm not too dependent. I'm kind of interdependent. So that's the healthy version. Okay, so another thing we got to think about is reducing the intensity, right? Especially because we're thinking that the intensity is sort of a symbol of love, but it's not, okay? Intensity is just emotional drama. And if your set point is kind of high for emotional drama, you're just going to keep creating it in your life, okay? So you got to learn to tolerate boredom and things being a little calmer. Otherwise, you're always going to create more angst for yourself and others, okay? So turn down the volume a little bit with the intensity in the relationship. So how do we do this? One tip from DBT emotion regulation skills is opposite to emotion action for love, okay? So instead of hyper focusing on the person, try to spend less time thinking about the person. Instead of making multiple efforts to reach out to them, to find them, to follow them, to seek their opinion, to get help, do that less, okay? Or ask different people and don't focus on one single person, okay? It's important to set healthier boundaries because obviously this is a very boundaryless behavior when you have a favorite person. So you got to respect that they need space and they need to be their own person, and so should you, okay? Also, you should practice detachment. Now, I don't mean like being detached and dissociated and not caring. Okay, there's a term in the codependent literature called detachment, and basically what they mean is reduce the intensity and take some of the emotion out of it. So you know, it's not being cold, okay? It's just like, you know, not being as intense, all right? Dialing it back a little bit. Um, Check your expectations and demands, because that creates intensity, right? When I'm expecting someone to do it right, when I'm expecting them to get back to me right away, when I'm expecting that they're gonna perfectly mirror me or perfectly respond to me, then the demand gets really intense. And when they don't, I get really upset, okay? So you gotta be more flexible with your expectations of them and handle some things on yourself, on your own, instead of expecting them to do it all for you, all right? And like I was kind of saying before, sorry if it's a repeat, so reduce the frequency of contact, okay? Even if you're living together, you don't have to spend every second together. Go in a different room and do something else sometimes. Don't always be like, you know, clingy, okay? If it's someone you don't live with, text them less, call them less, see them less, okay? Because it's just gonna fuel the fire if you have more and more contact, okay? Or maybe even, you know, don't talk to them about intense things as much, about bringing up really emotional things, really problematic things. Keep it a little more casual. That's another way to reduce the intensity. Okay, another thing is, it's important to try to get a life, right? So basically, I don't mean to sound judgmental, but like, instead of making the favorite person in your life, you need to do other things in your life that are fulfilling to kind of diffuse it, okay? So if you have other friends, other social activities, other hobbies, other work commitments, other whatever, then it kind of like rebalances your life, okay? It's not a balanced thing to make your favorite person your everything, okay? And you're obviously going to set yourself up for disappointment. Sorry. I hit my mouse on accident. And okay, so I think this is the last one. So aim for secure attachments. Okay, I'm going to also put out a video very soon about attachment styles, including secure attachments. And what they say is that if you hang out with people with more of a secure attachment style and you spend enough time with them, it starts to rub off on you. Okay, so we learn attachment styles through relationships, and it gets reinforced in relationships when they're unhealthy. And we can also learn new relationships by being with other kinds of people, right? And also, as you work on yourself, the healthier you are, the healthier the people you're going to attract. You know, the sicker you are, the sicker the people you're going to attract. So you can learn on your own different healthy relationship skills. You could improve your interpersonal effectiveness skills. You know, figure out what are qualities of healthy relationships and how do I bring those qualities to the table when I'm with people? How can I have those expectations for people that I meet, right? Sometimes we feel, well, I'm not sure if I really deserve to have a healthy person in my life. And I recently read something, and the woman said, what's wrong with accepting something you don't deserve? I was like, huh, wow, I never thought of it that way, but it's true, right? Like, what if you don't deserve a good person, but you can just accept it anyway, right? Practice with that. That'll help you develop a secure attachment. They also say that, you know, you could break down secure attachment into a set of skills that you can learn. Okay, and I'm going to go over that also in another video. All right, so that's that. I hope this felt at least validating to you, so that you know you're not alone, that there's other people that go through this, and that there's also a way out, okay? So thanks for listening. I know it was a bit long, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.